Hey everyone, in a previous video, my son and I took a look at the All Lives Matter versus Black Lives Matter as statements, as ideas, and as topics. And we looked at them critically and tried to pick apart these phrases just in logic alone. In this video, I wanted to address the why behind, the why behind Black Lives Matter, but why does All Lives Matter trigger an offense to Black Lives Matter supporters? In order to understand the heartbeat behind the movement and why that All Lives Matter statement triggers so much emotion in the Black Lives supporters, let's go back to the origin of the organization. So in 2012, Trayvon Martin's death and the lack of accountability held to the individual guilty for his death is what galvanized the movement. Trayvon Martin was carrying Skittles and iced tea. He was wearing a hood, minding his business. 17-year-old boy shot and killed. The individual guilty of this crime is charged, but then he's acquitted of those charges. We see the exact same thing with Ahmaud Arbery, and there's countless names over the centuries. What we see in that, and the reason that I'm going to give you it in parts, but what we see is that we live in a time, and I think it's been a while, where some people would prefer to live in the denial that racism does not exist. And that's very frustrating for the group that's receiving the oppression of the racism. Because the denial here is that it doesn't exist. So let's find a reason that this child was guilty. Let's find a reason that the individual that didn't have a gun or anything on them or was actually minding their own business, let's find a reason that they were actually guilty. They shouldn't have been wearing a hood. And we start picking at things that don't even make sense when the obvious guilt is there. And I think the reason that some of us have suppressed the reality of racism is because if it were real, then we would have to deal with it. And right now we're faced in a time where we actually have to deal with our own thoughts. We have to deal with our own stereotypes and prejudices on all sides, not just white people, but everyone has to deal with what's going on inside of them at this time. But for Black Lives Matter, it's what triggers in a Black person is because it is so obvious. You can't get any more obvious than these cases. And because you can't get any more obvious than that, then the Black people feel a need to then, okay, well, if you don't believe me in recent history, let me give you the empirical evidence that has been stacked for the centuries since Black people have been in America. So a lot of the times people will think that it's just a slavery issue. It's not just a slavery issue. But when we're not being heard, we feel the need to pull the records. So I hope that makes sense. When we're in denial or when we deny someone else's experience, they are going to feel the need to show you the pattern and say, look at the evidence. This is my assertion. You're not believing my assertion, right? Here's my reasoning. It's still not making sense to you. So let me give you the evidence. And so when we're saying Black Lives Matter, we're giving stacks and stacks of evidence of where a person has been oppressed solely because of the color of their skin. So I think that is what kind of triggers the emotional response, is not feeling like you're being believed, not feeling like it's a real issue, and feeling like it's being dismissed. That it's impossible for one person to address all lives in all of their issues. If you look at how things are done, an individual or a group of individuals come together to try to resolve one issue, right? So like I said, given the example of poverty or anti-sex trafficking, and this one is a racial injustice. Can we agree that there is racial injustice in this country that needs to be addressed? And if the answer is yes, then let the campaign be. right? If we can agree that there are people groups, various people groups get affected in different ways. Immigrants are affected differently than Americans are affected. Everybody has something that they're dealing with, right? So the difference with the ALM and the BLM is that BLM is actually an organization that actually has goals. It has a vision. It has a mission, right? And ALM are just individuals that appear to just want to retort and not support. That's what it looks like on the surface. Now, I'm not gauging or judging someone's heart and saying you really don't care or you're a terrible person, but I want to give you something to think about as it pertains to how, the interpretation of what you're saying. You have campaigns for poverty. You have campaigns for anti-sex trafficking. You have campaigns for immigration and immigration laws. You have all of these campaigns that go on to help solve various issues in our country, various issues in our world. Not one of them received the amount of criticism and scrutiny that Black movements have received historically and unfortunately even in our present time. And we don't go to someone who's running a campaign for poverty and tell them how to run their campaign. We donate, we give, we ask how can we help, we go on missions trips, we do all we can, right? You know, sex trafficking, which is a passion that I have of my own, people will, support, find out how they can help. They'll buy the t-shirts, they do all of that. You don't see them tearing down the slogans or the campaigns or saying, oh, what you should be saying to help these people, or not even to help them. This is what you should be saying. And you're telling people how they should be saying something instead of looking at the real issue and trying to address the real issue. Can you hear the heartbeat of the people in agony? When we look at these poverty campaigns, we're barely paying attention to the slogans. We're barely paying attention to the captions, and all we see are the people in pain. And that's all that Black Lives Matter movement supporters are saying is, can you hear the pain? Can you hear the cry? So I have a friend who is gluten-free. I also have a friend who is allergic to trees, allergic to oak trees. And my gluten-free friend, they're also nut-free. They have to read the backs of packages. They have to make sure everything, is gluten-free or nut-free or what kind of nuts, or if it says may contain nuts or made in a factory, that processes nuts or something like that. So they have to walk around, and when they go to restaurants, they have to ask for ingredients. If there's a potluck, they have to ask what's in this. Sometimes they have to bring their own food. So they live very differently than I do, because I can go out and I can eat gluten all day. Not the best thing for me to do, but I have the ability to do it. I don't have to walk around looking at ingredients for gluten or for nuts because I don't have those allergies in my house. My other friend who has the allergy to oak trees, he has to, I didn't know this. Now, this is something I totally did not know. There is an app that will tell him the pollen count because his allergies are that sensitive. So it'll tell him the pollen count in the area. And something else I didn't know was that Maryland, has a ton of oak trees. Did not know that. But he's aware of the oak trees, the pollen count. He has to get, nasal things and allergy pills. And I don't know if he needs allergy shots. And so both of these friends of mine, they live very differently than me. I can walk outside, sniff in the air, go grab a donut, and, be on my merry gluten, eating pistachio way, right? Whereas the other people in my life are having to be more aware of different things because they have something that they have to look out for, which is the gluten or the nuts or the allergies and things like that. My point here is that my friends have to go through life a bit differently than me. They go through life with a different awareness than I do. I didn't know that an app even existed for allergies, for pollen count. Why? Because it's not my struggle. I don't struggle with allergies. So it's not something I need to know. It's not something I've looked into, not something I've researched. I don't know what kind of medicines, what remedies, things like that. Same thing with my friend who's gluten free and nut free. I was making her a meal one day, accidentally poured in almond milk and completely ruined the meal for her. Actually, didn't give it to her. It ended up being a meal for my family. After I realized what I had done, I had to give her a call. I was like, oh my gosh, I think I used the wrong thing. Are you allergic to almond milk? And sure enough. So, but I don't have that sensitivity. I don't have that awareness because it's not required for my life. It's not an obstacle for my life. It doesn't encumber anything that I do. It's the same thing if you have a physical impairment and maybe you are in a wheelchair. Some people that are in a wheelchair, they're very aware of handicap accessibility. If they can, or how wide a door might be in order for them to get into your home, or if there's stairs, or they have a different awareness of their world based on their experience and that obstacle. And so Black communities, and I can't speak for everyone, I never speak exhaustively, I never speak for everyone, but for a lot of the Black people that I know personally, including myself, there is a different awareness that we have to go through in life. That even if you had a Black family member, even if you have, Black best friends, or, no matter how Black, no matter how close to Black you are, there's still a different awareness. I have very dear, close people, very dear to my heart, that have had experiences and encounters that I can't comprehend because I've never walked through it. So they walk through life a little bit differently and more sensitive to different things than I do. But oftentimes it seems like when the Black community is being addressed, it's automatically flooded with assumption, instead of understanding, compassion, and curiosity. And I have about 3 questions that are going to give you some peaceful yet courageous conversation pieces that you can have with even your kids and your family. And those are: if you had to stand up for a cause, what would it be and why? So, what cause in the world are you passionate about, and why are you passionate about it? What would be your campaign or slogan? And what will be your goals or vision? That's my contribution to you today. And I hope that you guys keep thinking critically, keep thinking for yourself, and stay blessed.